Hi, lovely. So, this week's episode, I'll be talking about my pregnancy and more specifically, my labour and after it, and some of the traumatic experiences that I had. And I wanted to introduce Lizzie from Modern Mum. She'll be joining us today because I wanted you to know about lots of things that are available after you've actually given birth. Because she specialises in physiotherapy, pelvic health, and she also offers an amazing service called Mummy MOTs. All of these things that I didn't know about as a new mum. So I wanted to tell you my story, gorgeous listeners, and hopefully it resonates with a few of yous and the support that's available. So it's a little long and a little bit traumatic, but I will do my best to quickly skip through my pregnancy and the end of it. So long story short, I had diabetes. Mason, my little boy, had to come early, so it was a planned C-section. They told me I was going to be induced, and it took forever to be induced. They put the pessary in. 10 minutes later, I was 4 centimeters.
Wow.
It went instantly. So, obviously, then they took me up to labour ward. I got stuck at 4 centimeters for about 18 hours or whatever it was. Then they had to then use is it an injection or a drip or something to start you in being induced
Mm.
again. So then I went from 4 centimeters to 10 centimeters instantly. And then blood was everywhere because I must have contracted that fast that the placenta came away from me. So yeah, it was really, really traumatic. So obviously then it ended up being an emergency C-section, and I was completely traumatized. I thought I was going to die. After all that, Mason, bless him, was born, and I obviously must have been tired from everything, fallen asleep. They left him on my boob, so to try and breastfeed him. Unbeknown to me, because I'm a new mum, my nipple obviously is getting sore because he's not latching on properly. So my boob was sensitive. So I was obviously had my emergency C-section. I was in the hospital for a couple of days trying to breastfeed, thinking, oh gosh, my boob's sore. But everybody says boobs are sore when you're breastfeeding. So I keep going at it. I kept looking at my baby thinking, oh, he's a bit yellow.
Yeah. Oh, not
I
right.
was like, oh, right, okay. So anyway, leave hospital, C-section, bleeding like a crazy person. Also with this yellow baby that I didn't realise had jaundice at the time. Not feeling my best. My boobs are killing. So midwife came. No, you need to go straight back to hospital. Bless her, she was amazing. You need to go straight back to hospital and get Mason sorted out. The hospital had some sort of closure or whatever going on for the children's ward. So they couldn't admit him straight away. So we kept having to go backwards and forwards for his bloods to be tested. Unbeknown to me, I'm getting a bit more poorly because I didn't realise my boob was getting infected. I couldn't walk properly because I had a C-section. So all these things were happening. Mason, bless him, ended up getting the treatment that he needed. He was on a light therapy bed. His bilirubin or whatever that word is. Sorry if I got the word wrong. Came down and everything. Obviously, I didn't realise I was getting ill at this point. So I obviously got mastitis. For those of you who don't know what mastitis is, your boob just swells, doesn't it? It's awful. It just becomes really inflamed and sore. I'm thinking, oh gosh, this isn't right. Keep breastfeeding, keep going through it. That's what the midwife kept saying to me, to the point where I was like flu-like symptoms. And I'm like, is this normal? And I'd go to the toilet and there was blood everywhere from obviously having a labour, but not actually birthing vaginally. It was C-section, and I couldn't poo, and there was all sorts going on. I had no tummy muscles. So anyway, I ended up in A&E on 6 drips because obviously I was almost septic, and my part of my boob popped off.
Oh my God.
I can laugh about it now, Lizzie. I really can laugh about it. I think at the time I was just like in this whole like world, and this went over for like about 2 or 3 weeks of just trauma of like Mason being in hospital, Mason being in hospital, then coming out, and then me being in hospital. And then unfortunately, my mum also passed away shortly after I got out of hospital. It's just so traumatic. And I remember just thinking, I don't know what I'm doing with this baby. I don't know what I'm doing with myself. I can't look after myself. I was so ill. And I kept having breastfed being force-fed on me. I'm like, I don't have a boob at this minute in time. So I remember the whole experience being traumatic, and I had to start back to work at 3 months. So the reason I've told this story is not for people to feel sorry about me. I will laugh about certain things, and obviously on other podcasts, I will be talking about Mason and IVF, and because he was an IVF baby, and I'll also be talking about obviously the trauma of losing one of the most important people in your life, obviously my mum. But I look back now and I'm like, how did I survive? And where was the support from the National Health? I had no support with my boob, no support with Mason really, and I didn't even know I was meant to be looking after my pelvic health. I've had loads of issues because obviously it was just wrecked down there basically. So hence why I've invited you today, Lizzie. So that is a long story. Didn't even make it short.
It's long, but it's what I hear every day in clinic. And that's just you listening to that now, it's like, right, this is just pretty much a normal day in clinic for me, listening to that story. And it's me sitting there like, oh my God, like this is just...
Yeah, but you're embarrassed to talk about it, but it's when you actually start talking to people that not many people's labour is normal. So can you do me a huge favour? Obviously, I know lots about you, social stalked you and everything, but can you just tell us a little bit about your background and why you, obviously I know you're physiotherapy, but why you specifically wanted to go into helping women and the pelvic health?
Yeah, because not a lot of people know that physio is a brand that looks after sort of pregnancy, postnatal, gynae, urology, bowels. So it's a really specialist area of physio. So I started physio like 15 years ago. So I'm Nottinghamshire based, but I went to Sheffield Hallam Uni, and a lot of it was all like everyone wanted to go into physio to do all the sports stuff. And I ended up sort of started with that, and I just got really bored of knees and footballers, and I just was like, I can't treat any more knees, and like, oh, I want to get back to football. And to me, I wasn't giving me the job satisfaction. But yet, someone is not continent and has to live wearing pads, or is struggling with pelvic girdle pain because they've had a baby and they can't walk or they can't bend to look after the baby. It was just like, this is where I need to be. This is where I need to be helping these clients.
Your niche.
Yeah, I just was like, I just don't want a knee or a hip anymore, unless it's a woman's knee or hip that needs it for actual bringing up her life. So I literally went on to women's health as like a rotation, because you have to move around as a physio. I never came off it, and I'm now, gosh, what am I now, like 14 years in women's health, pelvic health physio. So what that means is like we specialise in all things pregnancy, all things postnatal, anything linked to pelvic floor, so bladder leakage, pelvic organ prolapse, bowel leakage, painful sex, pelvic girdle pain, back pain, C-section, scar pain, you name it, we cover it, which is amazing because it's such a variety. But a lot of people don't know we exist and that we help with that.
No, I definitely didn't know you existed. I could have done with, especially like your C-section pain. The pain down there is so bizarre and so weird. But also numb at the same time. Is that normal?
Yeah. And I think what you're told is, oh, you've had a C-section, just give it time. Just give it time. And I had a lady yesterday, and she was, I think we're just over nearly 4 months postnatal, post C-section. And she's like, I can't touch my scar. It's still numb. It's tingling. And that's just where all the nerves have been damaged, and you need to massage and get touching and knowing what to do to get your circulation moving, to get your nerves to regenerate so you can feel again. But it's just knowing the right things to do, because postnatal checks now, GPs don't really check. And it's like you've had major abdominal surgery. You've had, an incision with 7 layers. And it's mind-blowing that if this was another surgery, you would see the GP after, they'd check your stitches, check your staples, you'd probably go again at so many weeks, see a nurse. But yet, as a mum, you have a C-section and you just left. And it's like, you're not supposed to lift, but you've got a baby to lift and you've got a baby to feed. And it blows my mind all the time that women's health just gets shoved to the bottom of a pile. It's just,
So sorry to interrupt. So say, for example, for anyone who's just recently had a C-section, what advice would you give them? Like, again, the NHS is so strict. I'm not bashing the NHS. I think it's an amazing, wonderful thing. But if like one of my listeners is thinking, well, I've recently just had a C-section, or I'm planning on a planned C-section, what should they do? Should they try and find somebody or go online? What little couple of hints and tips you could give them?
I tend to advise if postnatally, if anyone's coming to house, if it's a healthcare worker or if it's a midwife, always get someone to check your scar. because you might say, oh, I think it's okay, I think it's fine, but actually you could be brewing an infection, you could have a little blood clot underneath that actually you don't know, especially post-pregnancy, because your stomach's bigger and also you end up with sort of a bit of an apron and scar tissue. You can't really see it. And, you know, people say, ask my partner to have a look, but they don't really know what they're looking at. So my bit of advice would be anyone that you know that's healthcare, ask them. So anyone that comes around to check on baby, just say, can you just have a quick look? If you go to your GP postnatal checkup, it's normally how you're feeling mentally, what's your contraception, and that's normally it. But don't be afraid to say, can you please look at my scar? Because if this was an ankle and you'd gone over on your ankle, had surgery and stitches, your GP would look at it. But yeah, you had C-section and we don't look at it. So don't be afraid to ask.
I think that's amazing advice, because it is always about the baby. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's lots of amazing experiences where people have been really, really looked after. But as a new mum, all you're focusing on is baby, 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 baby. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. Baby, baby, baby. You forget about your own health. You forget to eat. You forget to clean your own teeth.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to obviously forget about your C-section scar. Can I ask what I know, but my listeners won't know, what your Mummy MOT is and the purpose of it?
Yeah, so basically the Mummy MOT, it is a full comprehensive assessment. So there's Mummy MOT practitioners all over the UK. Basically, Australia, all mums get a Mummy MOT where they get a checkup from head to toe, any issues, any problems, they check absolutely everything. And in France, everyone gets one as well. So the Mummy MOT has been brought over by Maria Elliott, who's a women's health pelvic health physio. Initially started in London with Mummy MOT clinics and assessments. And then as pelvic health, women's health physios, it's spread across the UK. So Gemma Atkinson's been really great at advertising, because she's had her second baby and had a C-section, and she ended up with a diastasis, a tummy gap. So she's been advertising a lot. So a lot of people have been like Googling Mummy MOT, and then the practitioners come up all over the UK, and you can just find a Mummy MOT practitioner that's close to you. You book in. You have 60 minutes to, normally I'm like an hour and a half because I blab away. And I also dedicate that time because it's there for you. Any problems, I always say, you know, this room we're in, everything you talk about is between us. Anything, poo, wee, sex, you want to talk about it, we'll talk about it, because no one else will. And it's that chance for any concerns. And the things that come up in Mummy MOTs, it's amazing. Like I had a lady yesterday, she was the post C-section. She's been getting hip pain, couldn't find anything wrong with the hip. What we think is with her surgery, one of the consultants cut her halfway and then the trainee then took over. So you can see the difference in the scar. So where the trainee's done one side of it, it's all healed a little bit differently. So we think it's all pulling, and that's what's given her like a hip groin pain. And who would have thought that would have come from a C-section and scar tissue? Amazing, honestly.
So obviously you mentioned about little things like sex, you know, and bladder leakages and things like that. So lots of us know pelvic health is important, and it can deteriorate after birth, your pelvic health. But can I also ask, I want to ask a bit more about the sex question, if that's okay. Or like they always say about keeping, you know, your sexual intercourse down for 6 weeks because obviously it's, you know, it's not healthy for around there. But I want to ask you that question, but then I don't want to forget about asking about if your pelvic health deteriorates after and during the perimenopause and menopause. So is it a myth about sex? Obviously, most of us women, when we've had a child, it's the last thing on our mind anyway. But for anybody who wants it debunking, generally speaking, is it advisable? Obviously, we're always going to follow doctor's advice, but is it because obviously you can damage things in there straight after?
Yes, we tend to say ideally it's waiting until you've had your postnatal check. So if you've had a vaginal birth and you have had a tear or an episiotomy, it's that risk of infection. So it's making sure that there's no risk of infection there. If you've had a C-section, we tend to find that it's the bleeding as well that's going to happen, but also a lot of women feel quite vulnerable with the scar. I have had ladies that have had sex at 4 weeks postnatal and have been absolutely fine, but it all depends on their delivery. So if they've had a normal vaginal delivery, maybe a graze, they've stopped bleeding after 2 weeks, they're pooing, weeing fine, they've not got any pelvic pain, then they'll be the ones that come back and say, oh yeah, I had sex at 4 weeks. And actually, it was a bit uncomfortable at first. I took my time, relaxed, and it's getting better and better. So I think there's always that sort of tick box of wait until you've had your GP postnatal checkup, and that's for contraception as well, which we know they always ask about. To be honest, a lot of people that I do see, it's really rare, even at like 6-9 months, people say, oh no, I've not had sex yet.
Yeah, do you think that comes from a fear as well? Like I ended up having a massive fear of pooing, because it hurt so much, and like everything hurt down there. Whether it was, you know, putting a period pad on because you just leaked like mad, you do get a bit of a fear of, oh my God, I don't want anyone to touch me down there because I'm only just getting myself healed. Is that normal for
and I think, and the thing is, it's like with smear tests. If you've had a painful smear test, you then dread all the others because it's like, oh my gosh, it's going to be painful. So the problem is for sex, everything needs to be relaxed. Your pelvic floor muscles, your pelvis needs to be open and relaxed. So if your muscles are guarded and you're tight and gripping, then you're not going to enjoy sex because it's going to feel more painful. And an orgasm is your pelvic floor muscles relaxing and then contracting. So if you're already tight and you're gripping because you're fearing pain or you're in pain, you're just not going to have a pleasant experience. So we often sort of say to ladies, make sure you plan when it's going to be, so you're in the right headspace. If you've had a really stressful day, try and create a bit of an environment. So have a nice hot bath first, try and be relaxed, maybe soft lighting, do some deep breathing, some pelvic stretches first. So we do have to prep some women for sex postnatal because it is important that they get back to that relationship with the partner, and they shouldn't lose it just because they've had a baby. But it's just that coaching, and I think we don't get that anywhere else, and people don't really talk about sex, and it's something, you know, actually it's part of life. It's not taboo. It's how we make babies, and I think we just need to talk about it more. And I think having something like a Mummy MOT as part of our assessment, sexual dysfunction, sex issues, sex pain, and what happens is they're sent out a form first so they can sit at home, write the form, and if they've got any problems, we then go, right, this is what we've mentioned, talk to me about that. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yes, talk to me about your sex life. And it sounds like lubing, everything.
I absolutely love that. Honestly, it's amazing that we live in such a modern world, don't we now, where like feel like we can start talking about these things, but still there's a few things that are a little bit taboo. Like menopause, that's a menopause, and that's obviously starting to be talked about more. Sex is starting to be talked about more, but instantly, as soon as you become a mum, you put everything else for a back burner, including your own health. The fact that these Mummy MOTs are not just based in London now and are starting to get more popular. And whether we love celebrities or not, they've done an amazing thing for pelvic health and menopause, you know, trying to talk about and debunking the myths for HRT. And it's good to talk about women's health. So obviously I'm 45, so I'm definitely perimenopausal. My periods are kind of like all over the place. So I don't think my pelvic health is too bad, to be fair. I feel it's pretty good, especially for everything I've gone through. But does it start to deteriorate as I start to get older, and some of my listeners and clients start to get older?
Yeah, definitely. And so your pelvic floor muscles, and the whole pelvic area, it needs estrogen. So our vaginal tissue need estrogen for it to be plumped, to be thick, to have good circulation. So what we tend to find is, as we go through perimenopause, as we get the ups and downs of your hormones, you can develop vaginal dryness. You tend to find that if someone is in even like 36, 37, they'll email me and say, oh my God, Lizzie, I've had this massive like cough and cold for like 3 or 4 weeks and I'm leaking. And actually, that shows us that at their age, there's some changes already happening. So we get them in, we'll do a pelvic floor assessment.
Do you mind me asking, is that like leakage, like bladder leakage?
It's normally stuff incontinence.
Lots of my clients say that, oh, they can't go on a trampoline now. When they cough, they cross the legs. I'm very lucky that hasn't happened to me on a regular basis, but I do notice the odd time where I've got to the point now where if I do cough, I do automatically clench.
So you're having to do a natural sort of brace and clench to support that, and that's a sign of weakness, because your pelvic floor muscles, they need to be strong, they need to have endurance so they can hold your bladder, but also they need coordination. And normally if you sneeze, cough, they've got the power and coordination to go, grab and hold. But if you've got a little bit of weakness there, that's your sort of vulnerable area. And I tend to say if you've got some vulnerability in your 30s, when you hit menopause, that's going to be when your symptoms can really flare up, and you can be tenfold the symptoms. If you've just got a little bit of stress incontinence with vomiting, for example, then you might find that as you get older and menopause and these hormonal changes happen, that your leakage will get more. So a lot of it is about nipping it in the bud earlier and doing pelvic floor exercises or seeing a specialist, so that as you go through perimenopause, menopause, you put your pelvic floor in the best possible place.
And that's obviously something that you do, and obviously physio.
Yeah.
The country.
Yeah.
If they can't get to you, can they just? Do you have any? Is there any video? I don't want to say videos, but like sometimes it's easy to watch a tutorial or a little webinar or anything like that. Is there anything out there for? I'm asking
there
for
is
you as well.
Yeah, there are lots. And what I tend to say is, I mean, the Mummy MOT itself, they've got a really good, we also do like menopause MOTs as well. And it highlights everything. So Mummy MOT itself on sort of Facebook, social media is really good. But also if you type in, if you want to find a physio, just type in pelvic floor physio near me. There's loads of us about. And I tend to share stuff on my social media, try and be quite normal and make it funny, and do reels and things to really talk about the emphasis of actually doing your pelvic floor. But there's loads of stuff. Anything specific, it depends on what some people like humour, some people like, everyone learns differently. But we tend to say sort of the pelvic floor NHS, the Squeezy app's quite good. So the Squeezy app you can download, and you can remind you to do your pelvic floor, how many reps you need to do. But normally I tend to say if you're struggling, go and see a physio, get a proper assessment of your pelvic floor muscles, because you don't know if you're doing them correctly. You don't know if you're letting go, because for a muscle it needs to relax and also contract, so you can get pelvic floor tightness. So some people will say, oh, Kegel's pelvic floor muscles make me worse. Well, actually they might be the ones that aren't doing them right. So it's a lot more complex, because we've got a lot of pelvic floor muscles, and we don't know until we test and see what's happening, and whether people need vaginal estrogen, if there's other things going on. So I think if you're struggling, start some pelvic floor, but I would always go and have an assessment, even if it's
and not even thought about obviously having an assessment on something like that. I just think, oh yeah, I can hold my weight if I'm busting, when I'm tattooing my clients and I'm absolutely busting. And I've had a few cups of coffee and lots of water, because I'm trying to drink lots of water.
Yeah,
apparently. And I'm tattooing away, and I'm like, no, Jody, you can hold it. But I have noticed that I have to go to the toilet a lot more than what normally, and that's obviously because I'm trying to be healthy as well and trying to flush out.
Yeah.
And drink lots of water. So I would have said, oh yeah, my pelvic floor is healthy, but actually I guess you don't know until you actually go check.
And I think that, I'm ex-NHS and now I'm fully private, but just I only finished last September in the NHS after 14 years. And what we tend to find is that we get ladies too late, and it's sort of it's more being reactive opposed to proactive. And you'd get ladies that have had leakage for 10, 15 years, and it takes a long time to then get back.
I think that's because, again, stigma. I know obviously I've said we live in an amazing world where we are definitely of the age where we feel a bit more open to talk about it, but an older client, a more mature client, it's still very stigmatized, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's very much going to a male GP to talk about this. It's, people don't want to do it. And also people go, oh, well, I've had a kid, what do you expect? But it's common, like 1 in 3 women will have some leakage, but it's not normal. And I always say, if this was your knee giving way every time you sneezed, would you go and get it fixed? Yeah, you would. You'd go to your GP. Oh, I'm sneezing, my knee's giving way. But yet we won't go for the bladder. And I think, like, you're spot on, it's that taboo of, oh gosh, leakage. But actually, no, it's not normal, and it can get worse as we age. And more and more people now are coming in and saying, oh, let's get it checked. I want to nip it in the bud now, because I don't want to be like my grandma. I don't want to be that smelly older person having to wear pads. I want to nip this in the bud now. And what is wrong with that? Women should be allowed to go, yeah, you know what? I'm taking control now. I don't want to be like this. And I've seen my grandma and cared for my grandma, and with the prolapse and leakage, and I don't want to go down that route. And I think that's amazing that women are saying, no, I don't have to cope with this and have to put up with it.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much.
Literally, get a bit empowered by it.
Okay, so Lizzie, I'm going to have to come and see you, because I felt like help. You don't want again. Why, as women, do we put? I joke about in some of my podcasts that I'm coming back as either a man or a crocodile. Because as women, we have so many things, don't we, that we have to address.
Yeah.
We do put ourselves to the bottom of the pile. I don't know if it's my generation thing and the younger generation are starting to put themselves a little bit more to the front.
Yeah.
But definitely is for like a lot of my friends in in the 40s and 50s and 60s. We put everybody else first, and you are right. We just think, oh, it's a sign of getting older. I better go to Ten a Lady and buy some of those pads. Oh, at least the pads are nice now. So one thing that you did mention, and I don't know anything about this, but I do want to touch on it because I just think, do you know what? I talked about poo loads and loads of times over lots of my podcasts. Seems to be a given thing. One of my menopause experts was talking about it trumps these days. So obviously, like with your pelvic health, improving your pelvic health does help your back passage as well as will you liberate on that a little bit if that's okay? Probably sounds really weird, but I'm genuinely interested and I have got no idea about any of that side.
Yeah, so basically when we're treating bowel health, you get two ends of the spectrum. You get ladies that have got fecal incontinence or can't hold the trumps in, and that's all to do with the pelvic floor muscles that wrap around your anal sphincter and your back passage. So with them ladies, it would be like lots of pelvic floor strengthening, but getting them to activate from more of the back wall of the pelvic floor opposed to the front where the bladder is. So we can use things like machines to help wake those muscles up. So sometimes if you've had a bad tear in labour that's gone into your back passage and had stitches, that'll be weak. So we'll retrain that so that you can hold wind. So you should be able to hold a trump in. You shouldn't have to bend down and trump come out. You should be able to hold it. Your muscles should be able to hold that trump in. You should also be able to hold poo in. If you're getting fecal leakage, so back leakage from the back passage, that's not normal. The other side is the ladies that have too tight a bum hole, and they're the ladies that might have chronic constipation, that sit and sometimes have to insert fingers into the vagina to get poo, to press it out, up the back passage, the ones that sit on the toilet for hours, anal fissures, hemorrhoids. That's telling me we need to look at stool consistency. So have you got that lovely type for smooth soft sausage that slide and glides out? Is it a bit harder? Is it like rabbit tods? Or is there something happening with the pelvic floor where it's too tight? So with those ladies, we have to do like loads of pelvic floor breathing on the toilet, using a stool underneath your feet, looking at what they're eating. Do they use anything natural? Do they have prunes? Do they have porridge? Do they take Laxido? So when it comes to bowel, it's quite complex and there's a big list of what we go through. So I do treat a lot of ladies that normally link into a lot of chronic therapists around our area. And I normally go and sort of link in with those clinics. So if they've got anyone that they're doing clonics on and they say, actually, no, I'm struggling with this, they'll come and see me. So again, it all links in with a nice network. But bowel and pelvic floor, there's a big link between them because it's your pelvic floor muscles that stop you going and pelvic floor muscles that let you go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot to it.
Yeah. So literally, the list goes on there. MOTs that I need to get checked out. But again, if you don't talk about these things, we all just get a bit like, oh, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to talk about it. I mean, years ago, nobody ever wanted to talk about women having orgasms. You were just there, weren't you, to provide for your man? And
like Bridgerton at the moment. If you've seen Bridgerton recently, it's all like just.
I'm loving it, but I'm a bit like that though. Oh, crikey, nearly every single episode.
I know. But it's women's places to make babies. That's it. It's not about their pleasure. It's not about them. It's just crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Crazy.
So we're really lucky that we actually have people like you, Lizzie, who want to specialise in these areas. Are such an advocate for letting people know that there are things out there that can help women and you don't have to suffer in silence, because lots of women do suffer in silence. So thank you so much for this podcast and thank you so much for sharing that there is help out there and there's lots of physiotherapists out there that do specialise in pelvic floor and Mummy MOTs, and just to reach out, because I know obviously from your social media and your website there's so much information out there that you guys are offering just to make you feel a bit more comfortable about opening the conversation. You don't have to just go and book a consultation with somebody and they're a complete and utter stranger. By the time you've looked at social media, Instagram, website, you've got lots of information. You're armed with amazing tools, so it kind of debunks some of the stigma and the fear of actually asking some of the questions. promise. So,
We're just normal people who love
yeah.
gooey insects, basically.
I love it. Thank you so much. So obviously my podcast is all about it's real life stories. So thank you for being real and honest with us. We'd love to mix it up with a bit of laughter and hopefully some amazing hints and tips on health as well as beauty treatments. So I'm asking lots of my guest speakers, is there something funny that you can just share with us? That basically will put a smile on women's face and that little sparkle that we all want, when we get lost with the rat race of life. Is there anything that you're happy to share with?
Oh, now you're asking. I suppose for me, you know what? It's so funny, and I think it's that I treat a lot of ladies that have pain with sex, and I remember I had one lady that came into clinic, and I just always remember this. She walked in, she was like, "I've done it, I've done it. It was amazing. We were all over everywhere." And honestly, I just remember this lady like talking to her about a sexual experience for like 15, 20 minutes, and I was like so happy that day. I was like, oh my gosh, this has helped this woman to be who she was again. And she's like, God, I just feel like I've got me again. And just, I mean, the things she was telling me, obviously I can't repeat here, but
She got a sparkle back then.
oh my God, yeah. And it was just, and I remember getting over and I said to my partner, I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy today. This woman is just like, she's got a sex life back. Like, it's just incredible. And like, that would have never have happened. And she'd been to see gynae, she'd had MRI scans, and they all said it's in her head. And it wasn't. She'd got an overactive tight pelvic floor. So we did loads of yoga, stretching, breathing, relaxation stuff. And she was just, it was amazing to see. And you could just see, like, she walked into clinic, she just had this smile. And yeah, she got a sparkle back, which was amazing. So yeah, I'll always remember that because I just literally was in for the full day.
It's amazing what literally giving someone confidence is why we do what we do.
Yeah.
Putting ourselves out there, telling embarrassing stories, but ultimately it's about bringing awareness to people. For me, a lot of my podcast talks around things like alopecia, hair loss, chemotherapy, because that's what I specialize in.
Yeah.
But it's also talking around menopause and real life stories like C-sections and things, because if people don't talk about them, you just don't know, do you?
That's it. Yes, exactly.
Honestly, thank you so much. So for my listeners, I'm waffling on as usual, but I will pop lots of information below. I'll pop Lizzie's details on her website and her social media handles for you to be able to send her any messages. And like she said, the Mummy MOTs are actually available nationwide. So that's good that it's not just London.
Yeah.
So I hope everybody has an amazing week. Thank you again, Lizzie, for joining us. I really appreciate it. And have an amazing week, everybody.